Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the halftime talk feature interview. I am delighted to have with us joining us today Dr. Qiang Liu, Secretary General of the Global Forum on Energy Security. And what better time to have Dr. Liu with us at the start of this year, following, of course, a year in 2022 when energy security became the name of the game. Because of the war in Ukraine and, of course, many other perhaps fundamental aspects in the oil and gas markets, which we're delighted to be discussing today. Thank you, Dr. Liu, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Liu, before we get on to the sort of topic of actual energy security, and there's a lot to discuss there, let me get your point of view on the Chinese economy and, of course, where that's going. We've seen over the last month a massive 180-degree turnaround in the government's approach to what it wants to do with the economy this year. And of course, for the sake of this conversation, that has a massive impact on energy demand and energy security. Excuse me. So give us your take on how fast you think this Chinese economy reopening is going to actually start to impact the energy markets.
It's the first China opened to the world, maybe in last month, the February, the 1st of the December. Chinese people just went out to some other countries. There were found some maybe patient or maybe with the COVID virus. They were found in many countries, but now I think less and less. In China, we don't. I think the pandemic is over now, so I think China and the world can reopen right now.
Okay, so well, I mean, as you said, I mean, China reopened over a month ago, and there are recent reports, at least from the country, is that it has reached its COVID peak infection rate, and so it's kind of now emerging properly out of COVID, as the rest of the world did when it started to open up more than a year ago. And I mean, as you said, you mentioned travel, tourism, etc. The IMF just yesterday came out with a revised prediction for global economic growth this year, 3.2%, revised upwards from just a month ago, pinning that really mostly on the growth to come from China and to lift the whole average up. Do you have a figure where you would expect, we saw what happened with growth last year in China. Would you say that it is on track back to, let's say, 5% this year, or is the government hoping to reach higher?
I understand your question about the economic growth rate, right? So in the past year, the growth rate is very low, even the lowest since the opening, maybe 2.7% of the year. So I think that's a very special year. And this year, no problem. I think the growth rate will be higher. We can start to open. We can go anywhere inside China and abroad. No limit. So that's like we were locked in my room last year, and this year I can go to America, go to Europe. So no problem. The growth rate will be higher. But actually, how higher? I think maybe 5% will be okay. If no war in East Asia, in some countries around China, the economic will be okay this year. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about security then, because that is your specialty. The Global Forum on Energy Security is a forum for think tanks, governments, businesses to get together and most importantly, for those who are in Asia and China to coordinate and cooperate and have discussions with those who are in charge of US energy security. And of course, let's get your take on the US-China sort of trade relation spat, if you like. We just had the US yesterday slapping on new restrictions on US companies from supplying Huawei, for example, with what it needs to produce its products. That relationship isn't getting any easier, is it? So how does that impact the whole energy security argument as well?
Yeah, the energy security was a big problem in the last year because of the Ukraine war. But you can see, at the first of the last year, the oil price was very higher. But after the start of the war, the oil price decreased step by step. That's just show for us that the demand is lower than before. You can see the demand in Europe was lower, the demand in China was lower, and so in this situation, we don't have a crisis in the last year. The crisis is not a price crisis, but just related with the war. So
what about this year? We have demand on the rise again at these prices of $86. So give us your point of view on that. I mean, China has been importing cheaper Russian oil last year. What are its plans to continue to secure affordable oil this year?
Yeah. So in this year, even if Russia wants to export more and more gas and oil to China, but they will have some problems. We don't have enough pipelines from Russia, so
enough.
Yeah, there is a limit of the import from Russia, but we can maybe import more coal from Russia, more gas. But the gas the amount of the import depends on the pipelines. So the ceilings was there, the ceilings was there, the limits was there, no problem. So the import of China is variety from many countries, from Saudi Arabia, from America, from maybe many other countries, even from Africa and Indonesia. So no problem from China. I think it's a demand, but I still think the demand in China is will be not that high as before. The population in China has peaked, and the demand in China already peaked. Even we import more crude oil from maybe from Russia, from Saudi, we will export more products from crude oil. So there's a balance. I think it's still the balance in the world. So I think the energy security will be better than last year. Last year we have the war, but this year I think the situation of the war will be better than last year. Maybe Ukraine can get back their territory from Russia, and finally they will have a peace. Finally, we all think that.
You're much more optimistic than most people we talk to who see this war dragging on. Let's talk about your region, though, and regional tensions, because that doesn't stop, does it? In terms of over the Taiwan Straits, etc., over the Philippines, there's certainly some tensions there, and a lot of pundits are saying that there's a 10-15% chance we're going to see that escalate this year. We didn't last year. The focus now might be the South China Sea. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, my opinion is we will not have war, especially this year. We will not have a war in the Taiwan Strait, in South China Sea. Even we have some disputes with the Philippines, with Vietnam, with some other countries, but the basic of the diplomatic relationship between China and these countries are still good. We just have some dispute currently, sometimes, but we will not have war. we have many investment in these countries, and we will buy many products from these countries. We have the banana from Philippines. We import crude oil and natural gas from the Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. So there will be no war, especially I think in short time. Long time I don't estimate that, but in short time we will not have war. But the tension is still there. Tension is still there. You know, many congressmen, congresswomen from America, from Europe will visit Taiwan. So China need to speak something, and maybe have some military, not action, military shows across the street. We will declare our rights there, but I don't think we will have war. Especially this, yeah.
So just political posturing, as you said, you mentioned there the visits from the US and European politicians to Taiwan, China somewhat. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned coal, and I wanted to ask you about that, because clearly China you know, it has ramped up its coal usage in the last year, also when it needed, when prices went up of other energy sources. Give us an outlook on that and how that fits in with China's energy transition plans, you know, the investment into greener energy sources versus its energy security. How committed is China really to the energy transition? It'll always going to have to prioritize its energy source immediately, isn't it?
Yes. The carbon strategy is important in China. We will reduce the carbon emission. We have the scenario of the 26 to 0 carbon emission and peak before 2030. So it's a strategic plan in China to reduce the carbon emission. So this is a good transition, especially to energy, but not limited to energy sector. Still, it related to the whole economy. The economy will be more will be greener than before, and for this transition, we need maybe import more many more other resources like maybe aluminum, some the metals from maybe from South America, from maybe Kazakhstan. And so this is a good strategy. As you know, we need to diversify our energy import. Not only natural gas and crude oil, we also import the energy metals and other energy technologies. This is good for the whole economy. And for this package, we need to transit. We will have more transition, and we need maybe more green technology, and make our economy greener and efficient than before.
And what about, you mentioned that you're diversifying your list of imports from different countries. Of course, the rest of the world also needs diversification for energy and commodity security. China, of course, exports very critical metals to the world for technology and for products. And at the same time, you have the US getting stricter, as I mentioned before, on the sort of way it's sanctioning its own companies from exporting certain things to China. Again, Dr. Liu, just give us your take on where you see that relationship between the US and China going this year, the trade relationship. I know it's compromised by a lot of politics around the world, but do you see at one point in December, we had talk of that softening a bit. You know, is this going to escalate or de-escalate this tension on trade between the two countries?
Yeah, I understand your questions. You know, this is very important for both countries and the whole world. China plays an important role in the supply chain of the world. So regarding the relationship between China and the USA, the sanctions, we already see that. But I think the sanctions will be more focusing on high-tech sectors.
Yes.
Not in the energy sectors. Maybe the chips is the key. So they have more disputes in these sectors, especially related with the chips. But for energy sector and the metals, it will be okay. I don't think there'll be more sanctions to China, but we still this does can show what I say, that we will not have war. The world is globalization, is a globalization world. So we need more cooperation, not a war, not maybe sanctions, but we need to discuss and maybe negotiate to and we take care all concerns from every country.
Of course, and your forum and your institution is very much part of that dialogue. Let me ask you, who is more important to China, the US or Russia? The relationship with both is clearly critical. If China had to make a choice today, economically speaking, it's an obvious choice.
Of course, the first thing important is the USA. The world is an economic world, not a military world. So USA is the market. We make a big surplus of the trade from USA, not from Russia. So with China, just don't want Russia to maybe collapse. Maybe we don't want a war around China. We hope the world is a peaceful world. So we don't want China to. We don't want Russia to start the war in Ukraine. We persuade them, but Putin is Putin. He wanted the war, and not China wanted war. We wanted a peaceful world, so less sanction.
Okay, yes. And it's a shame that China couldn't convince Putin, because clearly the relationship there, China has the upper and stronger hand with Russia, and perhaps this year we'll see some more pressure placed on Russia in that form. Let me ask you, Dr. Liu, before we let you go, a little bit about the region where I'm sitting, which is the Middle East. And of course, China has excellent relations with the Gulf because of its energy relationship primarily, and of course other investments now happening between the two regions. But of course also China has a relationship with Iran, with Russia, and with America. So it's holding all those strings. How concerned are you about the recent tensions we've seen here in the Gulf? We've seen a bit of an escalation this week between Israel and Iran. Iran has its internal problems, and so is not engaging externally as much on the nuclear program, etc. What's China's stance on that, and what's your outlook for the region and how those tensions could be diffused?
China pay more attention with the relationship with the Middle East. President Xi just visited Saudi Arabia, and we still have a good relation with Iran and many other Middle East countries. I'm not an expert on international relations, but I think China wants peace in the Gulf. We hope every country in Middle East can have a peaceful and prosperous economy and a good relationship in these regions. But I just noticed the tension and even the explosion in Iran these days. For my view, I hope this region can be more peaceful. And I hope I also noticed that Iran, they didn't say they support Russia. They just say that the drone was exported to Russia before the war, and they will not export the drone to Russia anymore. So I think that's good. Even if it is not the best, but it's still good. Every country.
They will not export weapons to Russia.
Yes.
Anymore. Why are you so sure about that?
Every country except Russia and maybe some, I can't remember which country, except Russia. I think the East Ukraine territory is of Russians. So the justice in the world still be there. Even Iran, they don't think maybe the Donetsk, the Donbass is of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully that'll reach its diplomatic conclusion this year, as you said. But some people are a bit less, and yet the impact on the energy markets at the moment of continued war in Europe does not seem to be causing too much panic, at least from a price point of view. So let's see where all of that goes. Dr. Qiang Liu, Secretary General of the Global Forum on Energy Security, thank you so much for joining us this week on Halftime Talk.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.